Morning, guys. Good morning. Okay, I want to come on for a few moments, guys, and we're going to be reading more of the 4 seasons of marriage, guys. We are in strategy 7, implement the power of positive influence. I think this is like video 18. I want to say 17 or 18. I think it's 18. But we're in strategy 5, discover the joy of helping your spouse succeed. We're going to read strategy 6, maximize your differences. We're still in strategy 7, but it's just kind of going like over a recap of all of the ones before this in this particular chapter. So strategy 6, maximize your differences, and then we'll get a little bit into part 3 today, putting your plan into practice. It's going to go over the 7 strategies as well, and then I'm going to see if we can read a little bit of the 4 seasons Q&A. And guys, we're almost done with this book. We're on page 160. The book has about 220 pages, but we're going to stop on page 218. What I will do at the end of the book is just put the camera on the notes as far as us closing this book over the next couple of days. It's going to be my goal over the next few days. I'm trying to have the book finished before the end of February, so that in March we can just kick off strong and get into the 4 seasons of marriage, the purpose-driven life in the other video. So the notes, I'll put the camera on for the notes, which is like 2 pages. But guys, let's jump into this and read as much as we possibly can today. I'm going to try to do like 10 minutes. If it goes over, that's fine. So before I get back on the roll. So strategy 5 is discover the joy of helping your spouse succeed. Barbara was in my office complaining about her husband, Richard. He wants to be a real estate salesman. For the past 6 months, he spent every spare minute studying for the real estate exam. I don't think he has the personality to be a salesman. He says I'm not supportive of him, but I'm just trying to help him be realistic. Has he tried selling real estate before, I asked. No, she said, but he tried selling cars and that didn't go very well. He thinks he's found his niche, but he has been working for a real estate company for 6 weeks now and hasn't sold the house. We can't pay the bills on my salary, and who knows when he is going to get a check. I could tell that Barbara was extremely frustrated. All her conversations with Richard had not seemed to quell his desire to sell real estate. It took 3 or 4 counseling sessions before Barbara was able to accept the idea that because Richard had spent so much time in preparation to pass the realtor's exam, and because he had persisted in spite of her efforts to dissuade him, maybe he could succeed in the real estate business. In time, Barbara came to understand that his success or failure might depend on her some emotional support. How far in debt would you be if Richard did not bring home a check for 1 year? I asked. The next week, Barbara came back with a figure. I suggested that she and Richard borrow that amount of money and draw on it as needed while together seeking to make him a successful real estate salesman. If he succeeds, I reasoned, the loan can be easily repaid. If he fails, it is not an exorbitant amount for the 2 of you to pay while he works at another job. At least you will know whether real estate is Richard's niche. With this emotional security, Barbara bought the idea of helping Richard become a success. She was going against her fears, but she knew that he deserved to have her support in a project to which he had devoted so much time and energy. I warned her against trying to take over his business and telling him how to be successful. Rather, her role was to be supportive by expressing interest in his daily experiences and rejoicing in any small victory that came. If he became disappointed from losing a sale, her response would be, I'm sure I would feel disappointed if I were in your shoes as well. But that's part of sales. We'll just look for the next one and believe the best. You want to be a success at this, and I know you can do it. We're on page 161, continuing on, guys. At the end of the year, the loan had been repaid, and Richard and Barbara had a small savings account. The second year was even better. Over the past 10 years, there have certainly been ups and downs, but Richard has become one of his company's best salesmen. He and Barbara can laugh now about their 1-year experiment, but Richard knows that without her support, he probably would not have made it. Barbara takes great joy in knowing that she helped her husband succeed at something he really wanted to do. As a byproduct of his business, Richard learned some principles at various sales seminars that would also enhance his marriage. He learned how to communicate with Barbara in a positive way and how to encourage her with affirming words. Together, they have been smelling the roses of summer for several years. Of course, Richard might have also failed in the real estate business, but with Barbara's support, he probably would have recognized it sooner and turned from it with dignity rather than defeat. Helping your spouse succeed may involve walking together through some failures, but at least you will be walking together. Remember, keeping your marriage in the spring and summer seasons does not necessarily mean there won't be some poison ivy and yellow jackets along the way, but a unified marriage will be better able to weather the adversity and stay strong. What desires has your spouse expressed? In what ways might you be supportive of these desires? Helping your spouse succeed is a positive strategy for improving your marriage. And now, guys, we're going to close this particular chapter, or strategy 6, and then we'll get into the part 3. But strategy 6 is talking about maximize your differences. Brad was a morning person. Before marriage, he had dreams of having breakfast with his wife, discussing the prospects of the day, and praying together before work. After marriage, he discovered that Jenny didn't do mornings. While he jumped out of bed like a jack-in-the-box, she eased into the morning like a bear waking up from hibernation. Excuse me, guys, I had to sneeze. So for the first several years of their marriage, Brad resented Jenny. He usually held his frustrations inside, but occasionally he would accuse her of being lazy. He would tell her that she should go to bed earlier, or that all she needed was a good cup of coffee. There were other differences that also frustrated Brad. He liked to hike, but Jenny was not a hiker. When they dated, she had accompanied him on a couple of treks, but she couldn't figure why anyone would want to walk through the woods and run the risk of picking up ticks or being bitten by a snake. She had been raised in the city and thought that the woods were for animals, not humans. She liked to go to symphonies. Brad preferred rock concerts. Within a few years, Brad was convinced he had made a serious mistake and married Jenny. The differences were too great. I didn't see any way that we could ever get it together, he said. Then one day I read a book on marriage. I guess I was pretty desperate, and I thought maybe I would find something that could help me. In a chapter titled Differences, the Grounds for Compatibility, the author talked about the fact that all couples have differences. Some learn to work together as a team, and others simply spend a lifetime arguing. He knew that Jenny would not read the book, but he knew that he had a strategy for improving their marriage. So I made a list of all the things that irritated me about Jenny and began to ask myself, what are the positive aspects of our differences? It was amazing what I began to see. I realized that Jenny's propensity to sleep in provided me a wonderful setting for my personal quiet time with God. I could have an uninterrupted time with God before I began my day. I realized what a blessing that was. So I thank God for making us different. When Jenny tried to hike with me, I was always on her case because she never kept up. This irritated me and made the hike less enjoyable for her. For me, hiking was a way of unwinding from the pressures of life, relaxing in the beauty of nature, and realizing that life was not a rat race. I enjoyed hiking alone much more than the frustration of hiking with Jenny. So I thank God for giving me a wife who encouraged me to hike alone. I learned that in all our differences, there was a positive side that I had failed to see. After I started thanking God for the differences, I found myself appreciating Jenny more, and eventually I got around to telling her how much I appreciated her. My former words of condemnation became words of commendation. In time, it didn't happen overnight. Jenny's attitude toward me changed. When I allowed her to be the person God had made her to be and recognized the positive things about her personality, she began to affirm me. We're on page 164, guys. Affirm me, and the emotional warmth came back into our marriage. I hate to think what would have happened to us if I had not discovered the truth that differences are the grounds for a compatible marriage. Your spouse may be unwilling to read this book with you or to work with you on a strategy for maximizing your differences. But you can begin the process by recognizing your spouse's positive traits, thanking God for them, and expressing your appreciation. When you take the initiative and seek to maximize your differences, you are implementing the power of positive influence. This power may well lead your marriage out of the dead of winter and into a more enjoyable season. As one woman said to me, after all that had happened in our marriage, if someone had told me that I would have loving feelings for my husband again, I would have said, no way, but I do. He has asked me for forgiveness, and is really trying to work on our marriage. I never thought that day would come. It makes all my efforts worthwhile. Given time, I think we will see spring and summer again. Through perseverance, prayer, and positive action, she was reaping the fruit of implementing the power of positive influence. So guys, that concludes the strategy 7, implement the power of positive influence. Now we're going to get into part 3, which is putting your plan into practice. And we are now on page 167, guys. We're doing great. So this is moving forward from here and now. Now that you have had an initial exposure to the 4 seasons of marriage and 7 strategies for enhancing the seasons of your marriage, I want to challenge you and encourage you to develop a plan for applying these principles to your marriage. I wrote this book to give you a simple paradigm for understanding the quality of your marriage and to give you some practical steps that will enable you to develop the kind of marriage that God designed for you. God did not create marriage to make us miserable. According to his design, a husband will love his wife as Christ loved the church. He will give his life away in ministry and service to his wife. In this climate of love, according to God's design, a wife will be free to reciprocate her husband's love and to find ways to invest her life in service to him. When a husband and wife both live according to God's design for them, they will be mutually submitted to each other and looking out for each other's best interests. In this free and loving partnership, they will be able to accomplish the purpose that God has for their life together. God designed just such a marriage for you. The reason I feel so strongly about the message of this book is because I have seen these strategies turn literally thousands of marriages from the coldness of winter to the excitement of spring. I know they will work for you, but first you must put your plan into practice. Abstract knowledge is of little value, but applied knowledge is wisdom. I will be the first to admit that my marriage to Carolyn is still in process. Yes, even after 42 years. The reality is that every marriage is still in process. No one has the perfect marriage. The good news is that you can have a better marriage than you do now. The strategies we have discussed will move your marriage in the right direction. So strategy 1 challenges you to deal with past failures. Failure alone will not destroy a marriage, but unconfessed and forgiven failure will. Strategy 2 reminds you that attitude often makes the difference between winter, spring, summer, or fall. A negative critical attitude pushes you toward the coldness of winter, whereas a positive attitude, which looks for the best in your spouse and affirms it, leads to the warmth of spring and summer. Strategy 3 encourages you to discover and speak your spouse's primary love language. Everyone has a deep emotional need to feel loved. When you meet that need for your spouse, you create a climate in which the crocuses can begin to bloom in your marriage. Strategy 4 gives you the tools to develop the art of empathetic listening. When your spouse is talking, the most powerful thing you can do is listen. Only as you listen empathetically will you come to understand your spouse's thoughts, feelings, and desires. Understanding leads to a blossoming of intimacy. Strategy 5, we're on page 169, guys, and we'll stop at this page and pick up the rest in the next video, which will be the 4 seasons Q&A. I'm going to try to give you guys like 20 to 30 minutes, Lord's will, in the next video. And then after the 4 seasons Q&A, we're going to get into part 4, which is the study guide. And after the study guide, we'll pretty much be done with the book. Yeah, so let's continue this. I'm going to read strategy 5, helps you discover the joy of helping your spouse succeed. Few accomplishments in life are more satisfying or have greater results than helping your spouse accomplish the purposes for which God designed him or her. Implement this strategy and share the rewards of true success. Strategy 6 teaches you how to maximize your differences. God made husbands and wives different for a purpose, a positive purpose. When you learn how to turn your differences into assets, you and your spouse will both be winners. Strategy 7 shows you how to implement the power of positive influence. Your spouse may not be willing to read this book or discuss strategies for improving your marriage, but that doesn't mean your efforts will be in vain. Although you cannot control your spouse's behavior, you can choose to exert a positive influence. Perhaps the most powerful way to influence your spouse is by applying the concepts you've learned in strategies 1 through 6. Take the first step. Ask your spouse to read part 1, which describes the 4 seasons. Then take the marital seasons profile, which will help you identify the season of your marriage. Discuss the results with each other and express your desire for growth and improvement. I hope that you and your spouse will read this book together, discuss the 7 strategies, and seek to implement them. If you do, I'm confident you will find that the seasons of your marriage will be greatly enriched and enhanced. And guys, that's going to conclude our video for today. Tomorrow, Lord's will, when we get back into this, we will be on page 171. So we did read a good amount today. And like I said, we're almost done with the book. I'm proud of you guys that have been sticking it out, going deeper in your marriage, future marriage relationship. This book has been a blessing to me personally, and I'm getting a lot of great feedback that it's a blessing to many of you as well. And I just want to thank God for that. And you guys have a great day. God bless. check out the other videos on the playlist. They are up for the replay if you happen to miss them. I'm going to leave them up for the replay. God bless.